All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm. I think that's what the overlords think. They don't want free speech. Anyways, guys, how you doing? This is my follow-up video to selling my silver. I got a lot of emails. Most people didn't like it. But I'm not here to talk about that. We are here to talk about why Bitcoin is going up forever. Laura, take a look.
The point is, if you have the superior asset, it's going up forever, Laura. Forever.
Right.
Now, that was from an interview a couple of years ago with Michael Saylor, the CEO of MicroStrategy. Him and his company have over 173,000 Bitcoin. He has, I think, 17,000 himself, just over 17,000. And his company has over 158,000. If you want to go watch that video of that interview, it's pretty interesting. But Michael Saylor has a bunch of interviews. And there's probably not a person on the planet today, probably, that can explain Bitcoin better than that man.
Bitcoin is an instrument of economic empowerment. I heard those words. They stuck with me my entire life. When I first bought Bitcoin, I said, it's the world's greatest digital gold network. It's going to be better than Apple Computer. But when I heard Jack Dorsey speak, I said, Bitcoin is an instrument of empowerment for 8 billion people. It's an ethical good. It's a utilitarian entitlement to all 8 billion people in the world. It gives property rights. It gives freedom. It gives a hope of sovereignty. That's a little bit better than the value proposition of Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. When I owned Apple stock, I didn't think it was going to cure half of the ills in the world and provide property rights to everybody in China or Africa. I just thought it was a really good investment with so much leverage it was unstoppable. Like Amazon's unstoppable, like Google's unstoppable, like Bitcoin is unstoppable. However, the difference with Bitcoin is it's not just unstoppable, it's inevitable and it's ethical.
Michael Saylor, check him out. Why is Bitcoin going up forever, Laura? Well, first we have to figure out what is up, right? What are we measuring it by? Well, obviously, most of us, if not all of us watching this video, live in the United States, and we tend to measure things monetarily in our economy and in the market by US dollars. And we have to talk to people in that way. Whether you're a silver stacker, gold stacker, platinum stacker, Bitcoin stacker, any kind of investment you have, you base it on how many dollars it takes or how many dollars it's worth at the moment or how much it costs to buy or how much dollars you get when you sell, right? So in dollar terms, any dollar, really, I believe and many others believe Bitcoin will always go up and measured by those dollars for two reasons. One, I think the US dollar is the strongest, obviously. I don't think, I know that. And it's a world reserve currency, but the value of it inside the border of the United States is going down. Now, it has been going up a little bit here and there, and it goes down a little bit here and there compared to other currencies around the world. But when you measure it against Bitcoin, the US dollar is losing its purchasing power up and down, of course, with Bitcoin, to the right and up for Bitcoin over the years since 2010. Back in the days when Bitcoin was first being priced, you know, when Laszlo, I think his name was, bought some pizzas and stuff, there were 10,000, I think it was 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas or something like that.
How'd you get this idea to trade Bitcoin for pizza?
I just honestly thought it would be really cool if I could say, hey, I just traded this, open source internet money for a real world good. And I thought, what better thing than food? Food is a basic necessity. And, pizza, every geek understands pizza.
So how did you actually buy a pizza?
I just posted on the forum. I said, if anybody's interested, I'm offering 10,000 Bitcoins in exchange for some pizza. And somebody there said, hey, I'll take you up on that offer. So I sent him the 10,000 Bitcoin. I said, okay, here it is. I'm waiting for my pizza. And, he phoned it in. He paid with his credit card, and the pizza showed up at my door.
And then, Bitcoin started getting its price or whatever, and people started understanding what it was. It was measured in US dollars. The price is doing what it does, up, down, up, down, up, down. And I'll make a video specifically talking about Bitcoin's volatility and why it is volatile compared to the dollars. And so when you measure it by US dollars, it has gone up since 2010, mid to early 2010 until now, right? And the reason being is, like I said, the two reasons. The first reason is the currency's purchasing power has been going down relative to goods and services. Now, up until recently, Bitcoin has been measured by two different things, and it was kind of like attached to these things. First, it was attached to the NASDAQ. Because you got the S&P 500, Dow Jones, and the NASDAQ. NASDAQ is tech stocks, and a lot of people thought that Bitcoin was a tech stock. And again, I'll make a video specifically telling you Bitcoin is not a stock. Okay? Spoiler alert, it's not. It's not a tech stock. It's a tech innovation, of course, but it's not a tech stock. So it was going hand in hand. When the NASDAQ would go up or down, it would go down with it, and it would go up with it, right? But it has detached from the NASDAQ. It's almost the opposite of NASDAQ now, of the NASDAQ. So when the NASDAQ is going down, Bitcoin's going up. It just had a complete detachment from that. And then a little bit after, the US dollar, just like precious metals, when the US dollar goes up, and relative speaking to the other six currencies, because it's being measured when you see the US dollar in the Forex, it's being measured by, the euro and the yen and different currencies. It's basically saying, hey, what is it value? What's the US dollar valued in terms of those currencies, right? The other six major currencies. And Bitcoin, just like gold and silver and a lot of things, commodities, when the US dollar started going up, Bitcoin would go down because it would take less dollars or more dollars to buy it, and vice versa. When US dollar would go down, the Bitcoin would go up. Well, Bitcoin is decoupled from that as well. So it's not coupled to that anymore. But as the US dollar goes down, fiat currencies are going down to trending to zero, because they all go to zero. I believe the US dollar, personally, based on probabilities and the record-breaking time the US dollar has been alive, and all the other currencies printing money and not having the power of the US dollar and the influence and the military behind it, like the US government does, is behind the US dollar. I believe the US dollar will be the last one to go, but it will go. And I think they're going to transition to central bank digital currencies. But again, that's for another video. So with the power of the US dollar going down, two things are going to happen. One, you're probably going to get less Bitcoin with each dollar. It's going to cost you more. It's just supply and demand. It's going to cost you more because the power of that US dollar, the purchasing power is just not as strong. And also people waking up to the fact that, hey, why is inflation so bad? If you look at other countries like Argentina and stuff like that, countries that have very high inflation, here's a list of them. Argentina, like I said the other day, has 143% inflation year over year, about a 20% increase month over month. Bitcoin's at an all-time high in Argentina, pesos. It is, along with other currencies around the world. Now, I'm sticking to the US dollar here, but I'm trying to give you some broader economic fiat currencies around the world, because again, everything is not about the US dollar, even though everything's centered around the US dollar. So when people start understanding, why is my dollar not buying as much, and stuff like that, it starts opening up that third eye, or opening up people to say, hey, something's wrong here. Then they'll start doing research, because again, the world is different now. It's not just MSNBC and the BBC and ABC and CBS and all the mainstream media people in the schools that we were taught economics by, telling us what inflation is. Oh, it's 2% and blah, blah, blah. People are starting to wake up and starting to understand.
In the 20th century, it got really screwy. It seems like because the technological landscape was such that everything was top down, right? We were basically getting messaging through mainstream media, which if you really analyze what mainstream media is, it's like Michael Malice calls it the corporate press. I think you'd also call it like the central bank funded media apparatus. Like, you're not getting truth through that medium. You're just getting agenda or propaganda.
A message.
Yeah, and people didn't have this ability to have this peer-to-peer value to value. The technology just wasn't there, essentially, for at least the entire 20th century. And so now, perhaps in the digital age, we're having like this resurgence of dialogue, or this return to the public square format of people just talking amongst themselves, and that seems to be really powerful. And the way Bitcoin, as you said, it is just free speech that also happens to be money, but now it has this extra capability, I guess, through the Lightning Network to enable freedom of speech in the digital age in a way we never had before.
Because I believe the best advertisement is word of mouth. So if you have one person watching a podcast about what real inflation is, they can tell two other people, and those two people can tell two people, and so on and so forth. So on that end of why Bitcoin is going to go up,
It's going up forever, Laura.
as far as the US dollar's purchasing power and people waking up, that's just what's going to happen. Another reason the Bitcoin is always going to go up is we have to look at, what does it mean to go up, right? Now let's forget the currencies for a minute. Let's think about the commodities and goods and services that you can buy with currencies, right? So let's take Bitcoin as a currency. Right now, it's not a currency worldwide. It is being used as a currency in small parts of the world like El Salvador and other places, but the United States, it's not to that point yet, even though people do use Bitcoin as a currency. Right now, it's on the second of 4 stages, and again, I'll make a video about that. It's at the savings technology stage where we're saving. But let's just skip and say, okay, we're at the medium of exchange currency stage where you can buy and sell stuff for, like I said, commodities, goods, and services, right? Well, there's a limited supply of Bitcoin. I don't know if you've seen this meme before. Infinity divided by 21 million. That means every single thing on this planet, including gold and silver, and everything else that you love, and houses, food, shelter, whatever, the hardest money always wins, right? So Bitcoin is the hardest money. It'll win out in the end. Just like gold beat, I think they're wampas, what the Native Americans had, the money they used until the, Christopher Columbus and the settlers came over and started using gold, because gold was a harder money. It's been used for thousands of years. But when you have Bitcoin, all the prices for these things, it's going to cost less and less Bitcoin to purchase these said items in the future when it comes to buying these things with Bitcoin. Like take, for example, you could take anything on this planet and divide it by Bitcoin. Look at the housing market chart or cars or something like that and go back 10 years. Now again, Bitcoin is just shy of 15 years as of this recording, years old. But if you go back 10 years, 5 years, whatever, just take a look at how many Bitcoins it took to buy a house, right? Right now, on average, it takes about, I think it's like 10 or 11 Bitcoin to buy a house on average around the country. It could be lower now. I've seen that chart a few months ago. It could be maybe 10 or 9 now. Depends on where you live and everything else. Because right now, as of this recording, Bitcoin's about 38,000 a coin. 10 coins is 380,000 in US dollar terms. But then you turn around and look at the houses. They're always building more houses. The supply of houses is always going up in comparison to Bitcoin. Everything else is going up. You can make anything else besides Bitcoin, but I'll get into that in a second. When you look at Bitcoin as the denominator and you look at houses, in 2013, when Bitcoin was $100, and let's say U.S. housing market was 100,000 versus 380,000 it is now. Let's just say that, right? For 10 years, which is probably about right. Well, how many Bitcoins would it take if the average house in America costs 100 grand versus $100 Bitcoin? I mean, it's not hard math. And again, you guys know I'm not a mathematician. Take a lot more Bitcoin. But as the years go by, when you think about measuring in dollars, you're just looking at the dollar. Don't worry about that. Look at it, how many Bitcoin it takes to buy a certain thing that you have in your life. You take anything that you have of value in this world and compare it and you know, stretch the chart long term now and put Bitcoin as the denominator. Yeah, I know some of you guys are gonna say, oh, 68, 69,000, 64,000 in 2021. Yeah, it was. But trust me, it's going up again, Laura. That was the top of the bull market. I'm gonna give you my Bitcoin price prediction for 2024 in the next couple of weeks. And let me just tell you, you're going to be surprised by that.
Just like you don't have to pay for oxygen today, prices would continue to fall by the free market at an exponential rate. Now, then you have to ask, what could measure that? And the only thing that could measure that is a system outside of the existing system without counterparty risk that is 21 million capped and can't be centralized or controlled. So you come to a pretty easy thesis. The thing that would be showing me prices falling to the marginal cost of production is Bitcoin, and everything else that people are measuring in the world is describing a manipulated world because it has to manipulate to make prices rise in the system we're talking about.
So when you look at everything that you have or want or desire in this world, it is going to take less and less Bitcoin long term to buy those things, to acquire those things, to purchase those things. Bitcoin is not like any other thing we've ever seen. Right? I make it to akin, or I compare it to technologies like fire or the wheel or electricity or the internet.
What you talking about, Willis?
It's a once in a species technology. Don't get confused by that. Now again, Bitcoin has a saying, don't trust, verify. Don't trust what I say. I'm like a restaurateur, right? Who I stand in the restaurant, I'm like a host, excuse me, not a hostess, a host. And I say, hey, come on into the restaurant, to the Bitcoin restaurant. I'll sit you down. And I know what's on the menu. And I know the layout of the restaurant and stuff like that. But I'm only in my first cycle. Bitcoin cycle is about 4 years or 210,000 blocks. But my channel is going to be based on the basics of Bitcoin and the fundamentals of Bitcoin, starting definitely in 2024, but I'm getting you ready for that now. I won't be talking about precious metals. I'll be talking about freedom and Bitcoin in this country and the world. But first, I got to take care of home, and that's the United States. But I'm like a host at a restaurant, and I'll sit you down, with the expert, and the expert is the waiter or the waitress. They know that menu like the back of their hand. I know the menu, but I don't know everything. Again, I've only been in Bitcoin coming up on 3 years, about two and 3/4 years, a little over 2.5 years. So I know some things, but again, I'm humble enough and stupid enough to know I got a lot more things to learn about. So my job here on this channel is to introduce you and sit you down. And once you hear what I'm saying, and it sounds like it's unbelievable, I want you to go and do the research. Let me give you a warning. Going down the Bitcoin or rabbit hole of Bitcoin, excuse me, is it's a trip, but you're going to learn a lot.
A lot of people have accused Bitcoin of being a pump and dump scheme, but when you really get into the rabbit hole, right, and you start to understand the nature of money, the history of money, the desired properties of money, I think you come to this realization that Bitcoin simply cannot be a pump and dump scheme because there's no better asset to dump it into.
Correct.
It's a pump scheme. It just goes up.
Precisely. And the Ponzi scheme out there is fiat. It's a promise on a piece of paper. We'll pay this is worth nothing. Bitcoin has proof of work. There's a reason for that. It's like I pay a worker here to dig a hole in 10 hours. I want to see the hole. And they do the hole, I inspect it, it's done. Well, I pay them. Proof of work. I can see it. It happened. They did the work. Proof of stack is inventing bookkeeping again. But with Bitcoin, we have a proof of work concept, which is the basis, in my view, for humanity to evolve. If you work hard, you receive. It's very simple to understand.
But when you take everything that you hold dear with a monetary aspect to it and realize, forget looking at the US dollars, forget you looking at any kind of currency, and just look at how many Bitcoin it's going to take you to buy things. A lot of people are getting priced out of Bitcoin. So when I talk about these species changing inventions, because these inventions, I said earlier, they have changed the world. I believe Bitcoin is the same way. Some people think it's a discovery. Some people think aliens left the technology. You know, I wouldn't be surprised by that when you see this stuff, because my goodness, man. But when these things happen, all these things I just mentioned, they start off on an S curve, right? They go like this at the bottom, and then they come up, and then they plateau at the top of like an S curve, right? Well, we're at the bottom of that said S curve, but it's not an S curve with Bitcoin. It's a J curve, because again, it's going up forever, Laura. There's not going to be a plateau. Now, adoption-wise, yes, there is an S curve, meaning, you know, there's only 8 billion people. There's 8 billion people, and again, 80 to 90% of people get to Bitcoin. And on that adoption scale, yeah, it will, plateau. But it'll never plateau on the things that you want to purchase with Bitcoin. Everything that's priced in Bitcoin is going to zero.
Let me explain something to you right now. Okay, here's a $10 bill. This is garbage. This is garbage. You people in South Africa, you have your rand, right? That's going to zero. That's going to zero. This is going to zero too. Euros are going to zero. The yen's going to zero. The Chinese currency is going to zero. It's all going to zero against Bitcoin.
I mean, it's going, and it's going to go hyperbolic and going to trend down. So right now I buy Bitcoin, not to get rich or nothing like that. I buy it because I love freedom, and I know that the central bank digital currencies are on the way, and I'm not here for it, and I use it as a savings technology. And I plan on, my date is 2033. That's the date that I plan on starting to spend it, because that's 3 more halvings from now. There's a Bitcoin halving coming up in 2024. Then there's one in 2028, and then there's one in 2032. And then a year after that, that's when I'm going to start spending my Bitcoin. I'll never turn it into fiat currency. I will start spending it for goods and services, but probably 95% of it I'm going to save for my kids and grandkids. Because if Bitcoin does what it's supposed to do, I won't need that much to get everything I want in this life. So, do me a favor, guys. If you like this video, hit the like button, only if you like it. If you guys like my channel and my videos, go ahead and share it. Guys, I'm making sacrifices. And in 2024, you know, I see a lot of people going to be, you know, campaigning for this presidential candidate and that presidential candidate, and all that's good. And I got my candidate or candidates that I like too. Because this world's kind of going to shit right now. And every time I wake up in the morning, I hear that Twilight Zone music, and I get down and stuff like that. But then when I look over at my phone, I remember I got Bitcoin, and it gives me hope. And I hope it gives you hope too. I love each and every one of you, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace and love, guys.